It was 1:55 a.m. on April 1, 2006. A security camera above an escalator in Columbus, Ohio recorded a 27-year-old medical student named Brian Shaffer talking to two young women outside a crowded second-floor bar. The conversation lasted moments. Then he turned, walked back toward the music, and out of frame. That camera watched the building's only public exit. It never recorded him leaving. No camera ever did. 2 days later, a plane to Miami would take off without him. And with it, the life he had planned. A man walks into a bar and is never seen again. How does that happen under a camera's eye? Brian Randall Shaffer's life was full of promise. A dedicated second-year medical student at Ohio State University, he was diligently pursuing his dream to become a doctor. His academic path was clear, his future stretching out, bright with ambition and deeply personal plans. He was intelligent, well-liked, and seemed on the cusp of an incredible life. But weeks earlier, in March 2006, Brian had endured a profound, shattering loss. His mother, Renee Shaffer, had succumbed to a rare bone marrow illness. The sudden emptiness left by her passing was a heavy weight on Brian's shoulders. He was still actively grieving, navigating the complex emotions of this immense personal tragedy as spring break began. Yet life continued. Brian had significant plans for his brief respite from studies. Just 2 days later, on April 3, 2006, he and his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, were scheduled for a flight to Miami. Alexis, a fellow medical student, was integral to Brian's future. Friends and family members held a strong belief that Brian intended to make that trip unforgettable. They were convinced he planned to propose to Alexis, cementing a shared future together. This momentous occasion, however, would never arrive. Brian would miss that flight. Beyond his rigorous academic pursuits, Brian was a person of distinct passions. He was an ardent, devoted fan of the rock band Pearl Jam. A unique and visible detail of his identity was a specific tattoo, the band's iconic Alive stickman figure etched onto his upper arm. This recognizable mark would later become a crucial detail when his younger brother, Derek Shaffer, would repeatedly emphasize in heartfelt public appeals, hoping someone somewhere might spot it. Derek continues to keep Brian's memory and case alive. On the night of March 31, 2006, just hours before he vanished, Brian shared a casual phone conversation with his father, Randy Shaffer. It was a routine check-in, the kind any son might make, discussing weekend plans. Neither man knew it would be their final contact. Randy would spend the rest of his life searching, publicly convinced that his son had met with foul play. After Brian failed to appear for their Miami flight, Alexis Wagoner, consumed by worry, reported him missing. Then began her own desperate ritual. Every single night, without fail, she called Brian's phone. For months, it went straight to voicemail, offering no trace. What one of those calls did months later, we will come to that. The evening of March 31, 2006. It is a Friday, the start of Ohio State spring break. Brian Shaffer, still carrying the grief of the past weeks, steps out for a night of casual celebration. Around 9 p.m., he meets his friend William Clint Florence at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. This second-floor bar, part of the South Campus Gateway complex, is already alive with students. Loud music thrums. Conversations echo across the room. At some point, Brian steps away from the noise. For that phone call to his father, the hours pass. Brian and Clint decide to explore the nearby bar scene. They leave the Ugly Tuna, moving through the Friday night crowd, stopping at other spots, then returning to the Saloona. Around 1:15 a.m. on April 1, they are back. This time, Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint's, joins them. The three are together, inside the pulsing, noisy confines of the Ugly Tuna. They talk. They laugh. The energy of the night continues its high rhythm. Then a sudden, inexplicable shift in the routine. Inside the crowded bar, Clint and Meredith lose track of Brian. One moment he is there, part of their group. The next, he is simply not. As 2 a.m. approaches, the Ugly Tuna Saloona prepares to close. Clint and Meredith conduct a final, frantic scan, but Brian Shaffer remains unseen. His friends, baffled, decide he must have already left. They try his phone, hoping for a connection. No response. Brian Shaffer has vanished from the sight of everyone who knew him. But where? Columbus police began their investigation with the most crucial tool available, the security footage. This case would become defined by what the cameras did and did not capture. Detectives meticulously reviewed every available second. Frame by agonizing frame, they searched for Brian. Their focus zeroed in on the South Campus Gateway Complex, home to the Ugly Tuna Saloona on its second floor. The primary lens belonged to the security camera covering the escalator entrance. This camera offered a direct view of patrons entering and exiting the main public access point to the bar. It was a bustling Friday night, heading into the early hours of Saturday, April 1, 2006. The timestamp settled on approximately 1:55 a.m. On April 1, on that digital recording, Brian Shaffer appeared. He was seen near the bar entrance, engaged in a brief conversation. Two young women stood with him. The interaction seemed casual, momentary. Then the footage showed Brian turn away from them. He walked directly back toward the bar area, moving with purpose. He then moved out of the camera's frame. That was it, the final confirmed image. From that moment at 1:55 a.m., the camera never again recorded Brian Shaffer. Not walking back towards the escalator, not heading out onto the street. No camera anywhere in the complex ever recorded Brian Shaffer leaving the Ugly Tuna Saloona building through that main public entrance and exit, the one directly covered by the escalator camera. This single, stark detail became the heart of the enigma. How did a person walk into a building and never walk out, at least not on camera? Investigators pored over the architectural plans. They studied the layout of the South Campus Gateway Complex. They knew other pathways existed. Crucially, at the time of the disappearance, an adjacent construction area abutted the complex. This site created a significant blind spot, a series of unfinished passages, temporary barriers, and unmonitored exits. This offered a potential, unrecorded way out. This was considered a plausible explanation for the missing footage. Not an impossible vanishing, but an unrecorded one. The physical search followed the digital one. Every inch of the Ugly Tuna Saloona complex was scoured. Every back room, every closet, every storage space. Nothing, no sign. The adjacent construction site became a primary focus. Workers joined police, pushing through debris, lifting planks, searching beneath scaffolding. They navigated the maze of unfinished structures. No discarded wallet, no phone, no keys. No sign of Brian Shaffer. The search expanded outwards. Dumpsters behind the complex were meticulously emptied, their contents sifted. Surrounding city blocks were canvassed, building by building, door to door. Police spoke to residents, store owners, anyone who might have seen something unusual in the early hours of April 1. Nothing. The Olentangy River flows near the Ohio State University campus. Its cold, murky waters became another grim possibility. Divers navigated its depths. Specialized sonar equipment probed the riverbed, searching for any anomaly, any submerged form. Search teams walked its banks, their eyes scanning the cold water, the muddy edges, the tangled undergrowth. Still nothing. No physical evidence related to Brian Shaffer was ever found during these exhaustive searches. Not a single belonging. His keys, his wallet, his cell phone, all gone with him. The absence of evidence became the only evidence. A vacuum of information. His phone, a critical link, offered no clues. After his disappearance, it went straight to voicemail. It was never used again. No bank, credit card, or ATM activity was ever detected on Brian's accounts. All financial and digital traces simply ceased. Investigators interviewed everyone connected to Brian's last known hours. William Clint Florence, Brian's friend who was with him that night, was questioned. He declined to take a police polygraph. His attorney advised against it. This decision, though legally sound, fueled public suspicion. Yet Clint Florence was never charged. No evidence ever tied him to a crime. Meredith Reed, Florence's friend who drove them to the bar, did take a polygraph. She passed. Months after Brian vanished, a curious detail emerged. Alexis Wagoner, steadfast in her routine, continued calling Brian's phone every night. One night, reports suggest the phone rang several times. It did not go straight to voicemail as it always had. Then it reverted to voicemail. The carrier could not rule out a network glitch. No location data was ever obtained. Over the years, tips poured in. Claimed sightings were reported. An online story spoke of Brian in a Swedish hospital, but investigators never confirmed any of these leads. Each collapsed. The official case remains open with the Columbus Division of Police. But for all their efforts, the fundamental question stayed open. Where did Brian go after 1:55 a.m. on April 1, 2006? How did he vanish without a trace? Why did every trace of his life just stop completely that night? These questions linger, unresolved. But before weighing any explanation, one thing has to be cleared away. Much of what you've heard about this case is not in the record. The Brian Shaffer disappearance became a sensation. Viral posts, creepypasta retellings, even some documentaries framed it with an extreme twist. Online discussions inflated coincidences into definitive clues. It created a legend separate from the facts. Take the central idea. It was physically impossible to leave that building unseen. That's the legend. What the cameras actually captured showed a specific exit, but the South Campus Gateway complex had other ways out. An adjacent construction area, for instance, uncovered by any lens. Then there's the narrative around William Clint Florence. Because he declined a police polygraph, amateur detectives on web sleuths and Reddit spent years building cases against him. Thread after thread, baseless speculation. Florence was never charged. No evidence ever tied him to a crime. This kind of internet rumor had real consequences for him, for the investigation, and the phone that rang for Alexis Wagoner months after the disappearance. Internet forums took this as proof of life. Investigators reported a network glitch could not be ruled out. There was no location data. It was a fleeting anomaly, not a definitive clue. Some even suggested the whole thing was an April Fool's Day prank, quickly dismissed. His absence persisted. The internet's version of the story is compelling, but the actual record is far more complex and far more heartbreaking. One theory, often discussed, suggested Brian simply left. A voluntary disappearance, a fresh start, but the fundamental facts quickly dismantled this idea. Brian's planned life, a significant trip with Alexis Wagoner awaiting him in just 2 days, a journey many believed would include a proposal, a new chapter. His future suddenly abandoned, and the raw, profound grief over his mother's death just weeks prior. Did he simply walk away from it all? The money never moved. The phone stayed silent. The theory of a staged disappearance found no support in his actions or lack thereof. No, Brian Shaffer did not choose to vanish. This idea, once compelling to some, quickly faded under the cold light of documented fact. So if not voluntary, what about a tragic accident? The path to such a misfortune was, in fact, present. Imagine Brian, perhaps disoriented by alcohol and the weight of his sorrow, slipping out through that unmonitored construction side. A misstep, a fall into darkness, an unseen injury. The cold night air, a growing danger, or the nearby Olentangy River, a tragic final destination. These scenarios are plausible. They describe a possible way out of the bar's perimeter, but the intensive searches that followed, spanning days and weeks, yielded nothing. No evidence of a fall, no body, no trace. The theory of an accidental death, while explaining an unrecorded exit, struggles with the complete and utter absence of discovery. This brings us to the most persistent, and to many, the most unsettling possibility: foul play. Online theories often pointed at Clint Florence, but authorities never found any evidence and he was never charged. The true focus of the foul play theory lies not within the bar, but just outside it. Investigators themselves considered the construction side the plausible way out. Not an impossible vanishing, an unrecorded one, which means Brian Shaffer could have walked out of the building, unseen, into the pre-dawn darkness of April 1st, 2006, and into the path of someone else. A random act of violence, an abduction, a fateful encounter that left no trace. Yet even with this explanation for his vanishing, the physical evidence remains stubbornly absent. No crime scene, no weapon, no witnesses, no body. His father died believing it was foul play. The proof never came. The case remains open with the Columbus Division of Police. The cameras have nothing more to offer. There was simply nothing more to see, only a haunting question. What happened after he turned away from the cameras? The immediate shock of Brian's vanishing gave way to years of agonizing uncertainty for his family. His father, Randy Shaffer, dedicated the rest of his life to finding answers. He died tragically just 2 years later, in September 2008, without ever learning what became of his missing son. Brian's younger brother, Derek Shaffer, picked up the mantle, his hope undimmed. He has tirelessly championed the search across nearly 2 decades. Derek publicly appealed to the global Pearl Jam fan community, asking them to watch for Brian at concerts. The Shaffer family holds to that hope year after year, refusing to let the case fade. The physical landscape of the disappearance also transformed. The bar itself, the Ugly Tuna Saloona, where Brian Shaffer was last seen, eventually closed its doors years later. It was gone, yet the South Campus Gateway complex, the very structure where he seemingly vanished, still stands, bustling with new life. An enduring irony, the building outlived the last known moment of the man inside. The disappearance remains one of Columbus's most widely known missing person cases. Local media continue to mark its anniversaries year after year, each one a fresh, quiet reminder of the unanswered questions, for all the footage reviewed, for all the cameras that once watched the building. The public record still holds no new image. Not one frame has ever appeared, showing Brian Shaffer again after that final, fleeting glimpse. In 20 years, the world outside gave back exactly one sign of him. One night, months after he was gone, his phone rang.